And here's the giant head again. Always scares me when I see that. But welcome to our last objective for chapter 18. And in this objective, objective 4, what we're going to be looking at are the demand and supply or the market for land and capital using those factors of production. These two are derived demand. So let me share my screen and we'll go ahead and get after it. So share that and find my, there we go. Okay. So as I said, what we're looking at here are land and capital and their factor markets as well. So in this objective, we're first of all, remember our definition. So capital is anything that we use to produce a good or a service, with the exception of land and labor. And so it might be a tractor if we are farming apples. Okay, I'm going to try to get away from apples a little bit. And when we look at what is the equilibrium here, it's going to be the purchase price. So first of all, the equilibrium will come from the purchase price. A purchase price means that we're going to own that factor of production indefinitely. That would be an example of a tractor. Okay. Now, let's say you harvest your apples and you're going to store them in someone's barn for until you sell them in market. That's an idea of a rental price. And the rental price is where you're going to have it for a limited time. So think rent here of a building. That could be considered an idea of an equilibrium, a rental price in terms of an equilibrium in a capital market. That could also fall under land as well, but I want to use it for my example right now. Okay. A wage is really, if you think about it, is kind of a rental price of people. You're renting their time, if you will. And so if we want to compare this to what we learned in the first three objectives, we can say that the rental price of land and capital is really determined by the amount of supply that's available, how many tractors are available, and the demand that we have, derived demand from the product. So here, again, the supply of tractors, which are available for us to, maybe you could rent a tractor as well, versus the demand for apples in the market, which is the derived demand. Okay. Now, so it does reflect, again, that marginal productivity of the factor. So what's interesting is when we look at this, we're going to say that the rental price or the cost, okay, because that would be the cost to us, should be equal to the value of the marginal product for that factor. So remember the value of the marginal product. And we use labor, but it could be the value of the marginal product of capital. So we're going to use K here, is equal to the output or the quantity that it allows us to produce more of. So if you produce 1,000 without a tractor, but 2,000 with the tractor, that additional 1,000 units would be the increase in the output or our productivity. Okay, the output gain from the capital times the price of the product in the market. Now, many times we use cost accounting to break down exactly how much value is the tractor adding to the product. So you can kind of see where some of the other courses that you've perhaps heard about or have taken can help with these ideas. So again, just as we used wages and we said that that should equal the value of the marginal product of labor, here we're going to say the rental price should equal the value of the marginal product of capital or the value of the marginal product of land. So again, just kind of putting this in supply and demand terms. Here we have the markets for land and capital. Here in panel A, we have the market for land. So we have a supply of land. Okay, that's the amount of land which is available. And the demand for land are business people that want to use that land for whatever purpose or what have you. Now, the supply of land is going to come from households. And remember, we sell our land, maybe rent out our land in return for rent. Stop. Okay. The demand are going to be those business people that want to use that land to perhaps grow apples. Okay. The market for capital we have over here. One thing I would have you look at, notice that the supply elasticity in the land panel A, meaning this one right here, you can notice it's much more steeper than the supply for capital. Why is that? Because demand is more inelastic. We can't just simply produce more land. We either have it or we don't. Whereas capitals, like a tractor or something, we can produce more. So notice it is more elastic as opposed to the supply of land. Here again, we have the demand. Those are business people that are looking to buy tractors or some type of capital to produce the good or the service, and we have the supply that is available. Here's the rental price over here, so that's a little bit different, and the rental price of capital and the amount in terms of the quantity in both. So in looking at the equilibrium price of each of these, we're going to say it really depends on the value of the marginal product. Okay, and remember, the marginal product is the idea of how much additional quantity output can we get from the use of this land or the use of this equipment. Then what we want to do is to multiply that by the price of the product in the market. Okay, price, and when I say price of the product, that is the in the apple example, that would be how much do tractors allow us to produce in quantity, how much more, times the price of apples in the market. Okay. Now it could also be, what's the value of the marginal product expected to be in the future? Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be today's quantity that increases, but the future quantity that could increase as well. Just as we have contributions, I'm sorry, let me just erase this. Just as we have contributions that might be expected immediately, but also longer term as well. Doesn't want to play nice with me. Sorry. I'm trying to do 4 things at once, you know. Good Lord. Okay. All of the factors, land, labor, and capital, are linked. And so I'm going to really make that more apparent here in land and capital. So again, the price paid to any factor of production, we want to take the value of the marginal product of that factor. So the value of the marginal product of capital, the value of the marginal product of land is actually N. And then we want to look at how much that factor contributes to our increase in output. Just as we saw the law of diminishing returns in terms of labor, we also can see diminishing marginal product in terms of the contributions. So I'm going to show you that in just a moment. But again, the marginal product of any factor, so this marginal product of capital or the marginal product of land, is a factor of how much is available. Okay, so elasticities, is it in short supply, much supply, that will contribute to the marginal product. So in looking at, for example, if we have, let's say China has a lot of land. So the value, the value of the marginal product of land in China is going to be low. Okay. And actually, I just read something in The Economist about how land actually is one of the prime components to the gross domestic product of China, being around, and don't quote me, I think 35% of the gross domestic product, because they do have a lot of land which can be used. So it will have a low marginal product because it is plentiful. However, if we have something in short supply and it's kind of scarce, then in a good example of this would also be a land type of category, but that might be petroleum. Okay, so in terms of petroleum, 44% of petroleum is actually goes into end user type of gas. And let me get the exact finished motor gasoline. 44% of that petroleum goes into finished motor gasoline, whereas 4% goes into emulsifiers that go into lotions and hand, so on. Now we know the petroleum is scarce supply, right? Especially right now at the time I'm recording this, we just released some of our petroleum reserves. So basically what's going to happen if that product, gasoline, requires a high percentage of petroleum, then it's going to have a high marginal product. If it requires a very low amount of petroleum, then it's going to have a low marginal product. And again, here's where we get the high price. Also, changes in the supply of one factor can affect changes in the supply of other factors, or the earnings of those factors when we talk about what is expected in the future. So as you can see, the factors of production, land, labor, and capital are interlinked. Much of it depends on how, I'm trying to stop my share here. Wish I could just know the hot button for that. If anybody knows, please let me know. There we are, stop share. So it not only depends on one factor, but they're all intertwined together. And that determines our output, our productivity for each of those factors. And so all of those kind of go into evaluating the cost versus the benefit of a particular factor of production. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you in chapter 19. Thanks. And stop. Nothing's working for me. There we go. Thanks.